In today's video, we're going to cover how not to write cold email copy, and the lessons I'm about to walk you through are after writing over 600 cold email campaigns. So a couple of the tools that I like to use are first Claude. I like using Clay. This might change in the future, but we're going to go cover, I think it's 10 best practices. And if you stick till the end, you'll be able to get an exclusive resource. Let's go ahead and jump in. So first off, what's the anatomy of a cold email disaster? Number one is that we're acting like a spammer, where we're blasting the same message that's not personalized. We're not understanding pain, and we're just asking people to take a direct action. To go from someone who doesn't know us to ultimately someone that pays us thousands of dollars or hundreds of thousands of dollars, what we need to do initially is get someone to raise their hand. Additionally, it helps so that they could raise their hand from sending them an email and then replying. We have to understand exactly what a value proposition is. However, what tons of people do, and I don't understand why they do this, is they'll do a spray and pray approach to their prospects. Then what they're going to go do as well is they're going to go say, we're a company that does this. I'm reaching out because of that, because of something else. And if we don't focus on the prospect, if we don't focus on their pain, they're not going to be interested. Their inboxes are swamped, probably getting 25 to 50 emails every single day. And if we talk about us, who we are, without a ton of authority, if we're Elon Musk or if we're Bill Gates and we send them an email, they're probably going to go reach out. For a lot of B2B companies, when they're getting their name into the market, we need to be very focused on them, on the prospect's pain point. Next, when it comes to the research and personalization of email, always try and use their first name. Try and use what their pain points could be. Perhaps add some type of personalization. What I like to do here as well is I'll gather a massive TAM. And then what I do there is I segment the TAM based on such as headcount or such as growing companies or such as if they raised capital or not. These are all triggers that we could use as personalization in our emails. The way that we scrape the list will ultimately be the way that we personalize the emails. That's what I like to do, and it's fairly effective for me as well. When it comes to call to actions, if there are multiple actions at the end of the email, it will confuse the prospect. So I only like using one call to action. Finally, if we want to boost our trust and credibility, what a lot of companies don't do is they don't reference their success in the email. They don't reference some of their case studies. They don't have a PS line that says, hey, by the way, feel free to Google search me. And then you'll put our 500 plus 5-star customer reviews on Trustpilot, something like that, right? And if we don't have a lot of trust and credibility, we're just another no-name company in their eyes. Next, so what's the first mistake? And I'll try and skim through these, is if we don't have a personalized template. If we're using this email, for example, let me zoom in here. Hey, first name, I hope this message finds you well. My name is Connor. I work at Leverage Operations. We help businesses like yours improve their processes and increase efficiency. I'd love to schedule a quick 15-minute call to discuss how we could help you. Are you available for a chat this week? So the reason why this isn't good is because we don't have specific research or personalization. It has a very ambiguous value proposition where we say, hey, we can help you improve your sales processes. They might think, what sales processes? Are you talking about fulfillment? Are you talking about sales? It's way too generic. Now, what we're doing is we're assuming that they have a problem without identifying them. Also, the timing may not be the best. Again, there's no urgency or relevance here, and it could be sent to any company, any founder, in any vertical. So what would I do here? What I do a lot of the time is I'll help companies improve their sales systems. So cold email outreach should be one thing that I help a company with. So what I would say here is something like the following. If I'm reaching out to a software company and they have 3 or 4 BDRs, I'm thinking this, hey, saw that you had 3 or 4 BDRs from LinkedIn. I was curious if you think that their output should be increased, but at the end of the day or at the end of the week, they always say that they're jammed for time. I've been able to help nearly 100 companies now improve their lead generation processes. If you'd like a free audit of how I think it might be able to help you, feel free to let me know. I think that we could have a conversation under 15 minutes and walk you through how we can automate 30-40% of your BDR's work. If we reach out to business development directors or founders of companies or even CROs, that message, we're not assuming that they have a massive problem. We're just offering a solution to them. And by saying, hey, we've helped nearly 100 companies like yours, if we can name drop a few of them, that would be incredible as well. What can we do here? The reason why this failed is because whenever a prospect looks at this email, we're automatically going to go think that it was just copy and pasted, and people don't like responding to copy and pasted emails. So if we segmented the list, and instead of going after just anyone and everyone with this offer, if we only reached out to perhaps specific functions and the leaders of those specific functions. So if we're reaching out to someone about lead generation, we're reaching out to business development managers, the directors of sales, the CROs, people that are responsible for revenue and responsible for leads, and maybe even like a CMO as well. Now, mistake number 2 is if we only talk about ourselves. I don't want to jump in this too much, but if someone clicks into an email and then they say, I am from this person, I have done this, I would like to meet with you. The 3 lines that they're reading always start with the person that sent the email. And that's not something that's really going to go hook the reader. What's better is if we identify a potential reason of why the message is relevant, the case studies that we have in the second email, and then we have a CTA that's oriented around the prospect or the recipient of that email. So instead of saying we're going to say you and your company, for example. Number 3 is if we don't do research. So if we only reference their job titles and we don't even update the capitalization of the titles, sometimes it looks very funny. If we pull data and we reference their company name, and then in their company name, it has an LLC or Inc. period. That's going to be a dead giveaway of how we just inserted very simple variables into the emails, and we actually didn't take the time to even clean the variables or try and use AI to personalize the messages at all. Number 4 is if we have a weak or missing value proposition. And what I like to think about a value proposition is, hey, we're going to be helping you with why so that you could achieve a result without doing this input. So what the formula looks like is, I will help you do X by Y without Z. And this is an incredible framework to use in the connecting lines of an email. So typically you will have your intro line, then you'll have your connecting line, and then you'll have your CTA. And then your CTA will typically be, hey, if this interests you, I could send you over more information. I could send you over a Loom. We could carve out 10, 15 minutes to see if this is worth a chat. Let me know. And the power in this is that we're using so that we're able to really focus our messaging into the benefit of saying, hey, we're going to be able to do this and you will unlock that. And then finally, we could talk about, hey, and you don't even have to go through the burden of this pain point. And that's where the without comes in. From there, if we have a weak or confusing CTA, such as, hey, let me know if you'd like to chat this week. If we say something like, hey, if you think that this would be valuable, we could take 15 minutes in the next 2-3 days to see if this lead generation strategy would be beneficial for your sales motion. That's a lot more directed. Or if we want to send them more information, we could say something like this. Let me know if you want more information. A better way of saying that would be, hey, if you want, feel free to let me know if you'd like to see a 45-second video that covers how we help the last 5 companies implement our proven system. What do we have here? Trust and credibility killers. Okay, so if someone ever says, I'm only taking on 5 clients from a cold email, that's a dead giveaway that they're a phony company, in my opinion. Oftentimes, companies will try and win business over having a stronger value proposition and instead of trying to have a fake urgency claim. Cool. Number 7 is the timing and context disasters. So what I'd like to say about this is right now, at the time of recording, it's the end of June and Independence Day is coming up. Canada Day is coming up for us Canadians. And the first week is pretty much going to be a complete write-off. So a lot of companies are still going to be sending emails, but the timing of these emails are going to be off because people typically go on holidays. So just having better expectations around reply rates around the holiday season is incredibly important to have as well, but also taking into account the time zones. So if we're doing a campaign and we're reaching out to every single company across the USA. If we set our campaigns to launch at 9 a.m. Eastern, and we have some people on the West Coast, some people from the West Coast are going to be getting emails at 6 a.m. because there's a 3-hour time difference. So it's just good expectations to know that, hey, if we don't get into account our timing of emails, they typically will get responded to because the prospect's thinking, who's this person sending me an email at 6 a.m.? And the better way how to do this would be to segment the list into time zones or starting your campaigns a little bit later. So if we start our campaigns at 10 a.m. Eastern, and then we send emails to the West Coast at 7 a.m., it's typically a bit better of a timing schedule for cold email campaigns. Next up is if we're following up too aggressively, this will impact our spam rates, but it also just won't get people to like us too much in our cold copy. If we're sending them in a follow-up email every single day and it's a cold lead, they didn't opt into anything, they will report us as spam typically. A good follow-up cadence for me and how I like running it is day 1, send an email, day 4, follow up on it, and then perhaps a day 8 or day 10, follow up with a new value proposition. So that's what I like doing. From there, in terms of follow-ups, the way that people mess this up is they won't give the initial time for people to clear out their inbox. They're trying to pressure people into following up. They might use some fake type of urgency. And then if they follow up more than 5 or 6 times, they're typically wasting their sending capacity on a dead lead. The way I see this is, let's just say that we could only send 100 emails in a day. If we try to follow up more than 3 to 4 times and it's a cold lead, what happens is we are allocating some of our sending capacity. So let's just say that there's 30 emails that we're sending emails to that are more, or we're following up to emails that are in their 4th, 5th, and then 6th follow-up. I would much rather send an email to prospects that have not received an email yet, because the way reply rates work in cold email is that the first email will get the most amount of replies, the second email will get the second amount of replies, and then it goes downhill after. So by the 5th or 6th time that we reach out to a prospect, we're not really adding any more value. It would be much better to wait 3, maybe even 4 months, give that prospect a little bit of time to cool down. Perhaps they are dealing with something at work or in their business and they don't have time to allocate towards your marketing campaign. So I would typically just wait and resequence that prospect in 3 to 4 months after the initial campaign. So I would cut the emails. I have a policy where I don't send more than 3 emails if it's a mass TAM, if it's a large scale TAM. However, if it's a smaller TAM, I like spreading out the emails, the sequence over a longer period of time. But then that way I'm able to have 4, 5, 6 emails go to that same prospect, and we're writing it in a manner that doesn't annoy them. It's a very nonchalant type of approach to book meetings and approach small TAMs. Now, what do we next? In terms of subject line disasters, one thing that's overused and vague, I say, is quick question. It's still fairly reliable. Using the term following up is, no one really likes the first email that says, I'm just following up. It would be much better to position the copy or position the frame as saying, hey, I was in a meeting and I just thought about you. I was curious, how have you been? And then you jump into your email. Using this line as urgent, this will get you into the spam folder. And if you use like these fake forwards or fake replies, it's a little bit deceptive. And then it's typically not the best way how to start a business partnership. Additionally, if you have a subject line that has emojis in it, I would cut that out right away. What else is there? Yeah, emails, subject lines that are more than 42 characters will typically not show up on your iPhone. There's that. So if it's more than 7 or 8 words, I would just try and consolidate like that initial subject line into one that's maybe 2 to 3 words. I think those are the best practices that I have for subject lines. The main takeaway here is that if we don't dial subject line, no matter how good our call to action is in the email, if nobody clicks on the actual email and then they don't get the chance to read the connecting line or the call to action or our PS lines, it doesn't matter. Because if our subject line isn't good enough, they won't click on the email and then they won't be able to read what's following. Subject line is incredibly important as well. The last thing that we'll cover today is the length and the format disasters people could have. In terms of the overall length of an email, I like making sure that my emails are under 110 words. It really depends how sophisticated the market is. If we're reaching out to CTOs at enterprise level companies, perhaps having a little bit more context into how we're different in terms of how our security offer is different than what they're currently using right now, it might be worth a read. However, if we're going after a mass market, what I found works the best is having short, concise emails. Even some emails that are 2 sentences long work the best. We explain who we are, how we could help them, and then what to do next. It's typically it's very short and concise for people to reply to. What else is there? In terms of formatting disasters, if you have a big block of text, for example, if you see this over here, if we don't have proper spacing, so this may not be the best example on this whimsical document, but I like to make sure that there's a bit of white space for people to easily distinguish points of a message. So this would be one point, this would be the next point. But we don't want to have extreme tiny font. We don't want to have HTML heavy emails, so we don't want to include photos, we don't want to include links because that makes the emails heavier. And when the emails are heavier, Google, Microsoft, Yahoo, they think that it's a higher risk for people to read those emails compared to just a simple plain text email that people could read. So recap, again, this would just be a really rough email. It's extremely long. It's not really formatted properly. If it's a massive email like this, I would just use bullet points in the middle and use like dashes as the bullet points instead of the bullet point formatting. I would just ask for every single cold email campaign, the following. Did I reference something specific about their company? Is my personalization relevant to my offer, my value proposition? Would this email make sense if I sent to their competitor? Did I verify all company information is current and accurate? In terms of the value proposition, I'd say, is it specific and measurable? Did I lead with their problem or opportunity, not my solution? Can the recipient clearly understand what they'll get? Is my value claim substantiated with proof or examples? Is there one clear next step? Is my TA easy to execute? Is my email scannable and well formatted? Is the length appropriate for the complexity of the message? For trust and credibility, does my email look professional and legitimate? Did I include verifiable credentials or social proof? Is my tone appropriate for the business relationship? And would I respond positively to this email? This last question here is incredible because if you wouldn't even respond to this email, why would someone else? So that's the overview of today's copy. I'll go ahead and link this document, but typically what I would recommend if you're building your campaigns for your company or you're an agency and you're doing this for other clients, what I would recommend is try and create a bank of your winning ingredients. So what I'd like to say is every single email campaign is similar to a recipe, like we're cooking something up here. And if we have different ingredients, such as our winning subject lines or our winning intro lines or our winning connecting lines, CTAs, PS lines, and value proposition frameworks, we're then able just to write campaigns so much easier. However, we also want to leave a little bit of room for creativity. So that's it. If you have any questions or comments, feel free to drop them below. And please don't forget to subscribe. It helps me out a ton. I'll see you on the next video. Bye.